Music and how it relates to the goth subculture. Sounds like a bit of a sticky thing, and definitely a subject that's going to cause a lot of consternation and drama amongst some in the goth community. And believe me, it's a thing, and it's ugly, and it's stinky. And let's put an end to it, okay? Let's put an end to the nonsense right now, okay? I've had up to here with you kids. That means you, and you. No more. We're all adults here, right? Okay, let's act like it, which is why I'm making this video. Now, it's recently come to my attention that there's some warring amongst some in the goth community. People are saying that, well, you can't be a goth unless you listen to these particular goth bands. And another side saying that, yeah, you're a goth, but you can't really be a goth if you're listening to non-goth bands. And so as a result, we're going to come to your house, we're going to take your goth card, we're going to rip it up, we're going to throw it onto the altar and burn it to the Dark Lord. That's just silly, okay? So a little bit about me. First off, I've got to say that I am not an authority on music. I'm not an authority on goth music. I'm just a fan of music like you are. And I am 51 years old. Yes, I've been around the block a few times. But as a result, I've seen and done a lot of things. I've gained some knowledge and experience and a little bit of wisdom along the way. So I think I can use that to help express my feelings on this whole matter. Now, if you will, let's go back to the early 1980s with me, okay? So here I am sitting in a friend's house watching MTV. And back then, not all households had cable, and not all households with cable had MTV. MTV was still a relatively rare resource back then. So anyway, we're watching MTV, and a world premiere music video came on. It was for a band called Bauhaus, a band I had never heard of before, and it was for a song called Ziggy Stardust. Now, I happened to be, at the time, a big fan of the album Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. It was a David Bowie album. So the song really caught my attention. But it wasn't just the song that caught my attention. It was Peter Murphy slinking along the stage and Daniel Ash's rooster haircut and the mullet and all that stuff. I mean, the atmosphere of it, the aesthetics of it really caught my attention. And I love the way the band performed the song. So I was like, at that point, I'm like saying, take my money, sign me up, I'm in it for life. And a couple of years before that, in late 1979, I was in bed one night, listening to my headphones, the radio on my headphones, going to sleep, and I heard the song I'd never heard of before, in a style I'd never heard of before. Now, mind you, back then, the popular music on the radio was Van Halen, ELO, Journey, Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, things of that nature, ZZ Top, things of that nature. And I was a fan of Kiss and Alice Cooper at the time, so I was already darkly inclined. And when I heard this new style of music, I was like entranced. I'm like, whoa. It was like pieces of the puzzle started falling together. And it was like putting your toe in the water of a pool. You just want to try it out, and it's like, it feels good. So that's what Gary Newman was for me. It was like opening up the door for me. And then a couple of years later, when I saw the Bauhaus video, I was like, I'm all in. This is for me. So it was a huge influence. So I've been there since damn near the beginning. So that gives me a lot of perspective. So when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, you know what? I really am into this whole gothic subculture thing, but do I really have to listen to goth music? Really? Do I have to? I'm going to say yeah. Yeah, you should. You really should listen to goth music, and this is why. Buildings are built on a foundation, and if without the foundation, it's going to crumble, fall apart. It's not going to be sturdy. It's not going to be strong. And like buildings, religions, cultures, subcultures, politics, belief systems have a unified set of principles and beliefs. People get together and say, we agree to this. This is what our belief system, this is what our culture is going to be based upon. And for the gothic subculture, it was music. Fashion did not come before the music. Fashion did not come before Susie and the Banshees. Fashion did not come before Joy Division, The Cure, Bauhaus. The fashion came as a result of the music. You know, the classical female goth makeup style was derived from Susie Sue of Susie and the Banshees. If Susie Sue did not exist, that style would not exist to this day. The fashion, all that. Now, that said, there are aspects of the goth subculture, literary, cinematic, etc., philosophical, architectural. There are components of the goth subculture, but they are not necessarily the foundation of the goth subculture. It is the music. So, when I say that, I'm not saying that you have to listen to Bauhaus, you have to listen to Susie and the Banshees, you don't have to listen to The Cure. It's great if you do listen to it. I think it's informative, I think it's instructive, and I think it's respectful if you go back and look at the roots, the founding fathers and mothers, you will, of the Gothic subculture. That means Susie and the Banshees, The Cure, Joy Division, The Damned, Bauhaus, Sisters of Mercy. Those are the foundational bands of the Gothic subculture. And in order to really understand the Gothic subculture, you really should go back to the roots. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to like them. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to listen to them constantly just to fit in. It's just a get to know you kind of situation. Get to know your roots. Get to know where the subculture came from, and get to know it so you can identify with others in the subculture. You know what they're talking about. You know, it's feels kind of uncomfortable being in a conversation where everybody else knows something and you're the only one left out. Again, you don't have to be a fan of the bands, just get to know them a little bit. And you don't limit yourself to one particular style of music. The Gothic subculture has actually got a wide variety. You've got the traditional, Sisters of Mercy, Cure. You've got the Damned and Joy Division and all that. You don't have to listen to them, like I already said, but you've also got Wumpscut, Skinny Puppy. You've got cyber goth bands. You've got just a wide variety. You've got Dead Can Dance, more of a swirly style kind of goth music. It's just a wide variety underneath the umbrella of goth. And so I've got a large CD collection, and these are just a few I grabbed at random to show you. Some of these are not explicitly goth, but they are influential to the goth subculture. Barry Newman, for example, I already mentioned him. It would be, I guess you would say, gothic friendly. Christian Death. It's more death rock than actual goth, but it was very influential to the early goth movement back in the early 1980s. A band that says they are not goth, they're very explicit in saying that. The Cure, very influential to the goth subculture. The Cure's Blood Flowers CD. Now, I've been on a Cure kick lately, so that's the reason why I have two of them to show you. Bauhaus, that's a given for me. The Mission UK. In the United States, they'll be known as the Mission UK. In Britain and other places, they'll be known as The Mission. That's due to copyright. This is a band that splintered off of the Sisters of Mercy back in the 1980s. This is an explicitly goth band, The Garden of Delight. A lot of goths really aren't aware of them, but more should be aware of them. If you like the Sisters of Mercy, you'll like The Garden of Delight. Another CD by Garden of Delight. And if you can't find a style of gothic music you like, I recommend getting a gothic compilation CD such as this. There's a wide variety of them out there. I think Cleopatra Records is a big purveyor of gothic compilation. Project Records is another one. Wide variety of bands to choose from, and I'm sure you'll find something you like from that. So yeah, I'm going to say that yes, you really should. I think it's pretty much a prerequisite that you listen to some style of gothic music. It's like saying you're a Christian but you don't believe in Jesus. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like saying you're going to be Orthodox Jewish but you don't keep kosher. It just doesn't make sense. It's like saying you're going to be Republican but you believe in communism. It just doesn't make sense. And being a goth without listening to goth music, it just doesn't make sense because you're basically denying the foundations of the subculture. Okay. Now, for the other argument that why are you a goth but listening to non-goth music? We're going to take your goth card from you. Well, let me say this. Miles Davis at the Fillmore. Yes, I like jazz. For you 90s fans, Daisy Chainsaw. band I believe is a foundation for the what I call proto-goth movement, a band that helped create the dark roots of what later became goth, a band that helped inspire some early post-punk musicians. Black Sabbath, the use of the Devil's Tritone. Look at the aesthetics of the album art. You know, it looks like a witch out in the middle of a English countryside with very strange tones to it. The use of the Devil's Tritone, the lyrical content, the use of sound effects such as falling rain and ringing church bells, very gothic. Another Black Sabbath album, Master of Reality. It's in the traditional funeral colors of purple and black. And songs such as Solitude, Children of the Grave, Lord of this World, After Forever. Very heavy lyrical content, very dark, very brooding. It's not explicitly gothic, but it's gothic friendly, and it is an influence on early gothic musicians. We all had to start somewhere. We were all kids at one point in time. Before we discovered goth, we had other interests. And though a lot of those interests help inform our later years, and a lot of the early musicians that helped form early goth listen to bands like Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Kiss. They were influential to them. So without bands like Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, and Kiss, goth may not necessarily exist. Some people call Black Sabbath metal. I consider them more of a dark, hard rock music. Now, if we're talking about metal, there's a genre called gothic metal, and here's a good purveyor of that, My Dying Bride. Wow, you want to talk about depressive, plotting music? That's a band for you. Hawkwind. If you like Motorhead, you'll like Hawkwind because Lemmy played bass and sang with Hawkwind. Okay, now I talked about music we liked as a kid. Temptations, Papa Rosa Rolling Stone. Yes, that was on the radio a lot when I was a kid, so I have a sentimental attachment to that band. And here's one that'll kick you in the teeth. It's going to be a triggering event for some of you. The Grateful Dead. Yes, kids, you can be gothic and listen to the Grateful Dead. It was what I listened to as a kid. My mom listened to Grateful Dead. It was on the radio a lot. And let me just speak for just a second about the late 60s music. You had the Jefferson Airplane, Bob Dylan, latter-day Beatles with Sgt. Pepper's and the White Album, etc. The Velvet Underground, The Doors. Their lyricisms, their themes, the music they created was much different from the music that preceded them. Before them, it was, let's take a walk down by the lake under the moon and look deep in each other's eyes and say, golly gee whiz, or hey, let's go to the beach and hang 10, moondoggy, my little sweet 16, I want to hold your hand. There were lyrics that really had not much in the way of meaning, but they were very popular. But these other bands came along and basically just smashed those boundaries down and made it possible for future bands to explore areas that had previously been unexplored. So I think we owe a big debt of gratitude to these groundbreaking bands of the late 1960s. Punk was in large part a reaction to these bands. So if these bands had not existed, punk may not have existed for what would have rebelled against. And we all know goth arose from punk and post-punk. And like I also said, some of these bands, like the Grateful Dead, Greg Ginn, the guitarist for punk band Black Flag, is a huge fan of the Grateful Dead. So a lot of these bands were influenced by the Grateful Dead, Black Sabbath, etc. So don't let anybody say you cannot listen to non-goth music. That is patently absurd. If the early musicians who created goth followed that kind of advice, goth may not exist at this point in time. So, and we all have our own sentimental favorites. We grew up listening to certain kinds of music, and frankly, I think it's a crime to limit yourself so severely, so narrowly to one style of music. So I'm going to get off my soapbox regarding that. So yes, you can listen to non-goth music. I know some some major uber goths out there who put me and most other goths to shame. They like the Beach Boys, for God's sakes. Is anybody going to take their goth card away? I say no. So let's grow out of this childish notion that you cannot listen to non-goth music. I'm not going to tell you what you must listen to, but I'm going to say that if you do want to be in the Gothic subculture, and at least identify with other goths, you should listen to Gothic music because it is the basis of the Gothic subculture. That's my 2 cents. I'm going to have me a drink of water real quick because it is nasty outside. Little tiki cup. I live in the Seattle area right now, and the skies are very, very, very smoky. There's forest fires up in British Columbia, Canada, and the smoke is drifting downwards to where I'm at, and the air quality, they're saying, is the worst in the nation, and I believe it. I was born with asthma, and it does burn my lungs a little bit, and it's making me kind of cough, and my nose is burning and whatnot, and I know other people are out wearing masks, so I gotta drink water every once in a while, or else I'm just gonna, well, not literally die, but I'm gonna hate life if I don't drink water and keep my throat somewhat moist. Yeah, Seattle has a good goth scene. Southern California has got a great goth scene. I lived in Southern California for 25 years. Highly recommend that. So yeah, I've got a lot of activity in the Gothic scene. I've been around, been there, done that. I'm a little old and grizzled now. I'm not exactly up to my old past, but I'm still here. I'm still trying to keep the faith, and I want you guys, especially the newer goths out there, the baby bats, to explore, dive in, look for new music, look for something that really speaks to you within the Gothic genre, whether it's Skinny Puppy, whether it's Bauhaus, whether it's Susie and the Banshees, or Merciful Nuns, or Cramps, or any bands like that. Explore. Find something new. I mean, this is the time of your life when you're supposed to explore and have a wide range of options and opportunities before you. And if you're an old crust like I am, get out of your rut. Don't just listen to one thing. Explore a little bit as well. This is the only way we're really going to keep the Gothic subculture going. There's been a lot of talk lately about how Gothic clubs are closing down right and left, and how a lot of activity in the Gothic scene is moving away from meet space, face-to-face socialization, and more toward online forums. And a lot of the Gothic videos that you see these days, and this has been mentioned by some Gothic YouTubers, a lot of the Gothic videos I'm seeing are makeup tutorials. When is the subculture based on just Gothic makeup tutorials? Yeah, it's nice to be able to put on your makeup without looking, like scrawling a crayon on you. Yeah, it's good to look. It's fine to look good, but some of this is like really, really superficial and not based upon, principles, or not based upon, philosophical aesthetics. So it's not based upon the music. And if we're going to help keep the subculture going, and we've been going for 40 years now, if we're going to keep it going, we've got to support the bands, we've got to support the music, because if it all rises up from the music, we have to support the bands. We've got to buy the CDs, we've got to buy the downloads, we've got to go to the concerts, we've got to buy the t-shirts and the bumper stickers, we've got to support our artists, and speaking of artists, we've got to support those who paint and draw and sculpt, and who write, who create videos. We've got to. It's a very creative subculture. It's very much based on art and creativity. We've got to support the creators in our scene. And one way of doing it is going out, buying a little piece of art, buying a CD, going to a show, supporting the subculture. Without our active participation, the subculture dies. So, also, listening to Gothic music means you support the Gothic subculture and keep it vibrant. By ignoring the foundation of the Gothic subculture, you're helping to destroy the Gothic subculture, and that's a damn shame. So with that little happy parting thought, I'm going to say goodbye and take care.